Welcome to another episode of the Apex Perspective podcast. Today, I have the absolute pleasure to sit down with Suresh Jhunjhnuwala, who is currently the founder and CEO at Plantation Bay Hotels. Now, Suresh, can we get started with your background and how it led you to getting into the hotel industry?
Okay, basically, I'd like to start with where I'm from. Basically, I was born in Burma, Rangoon. Now they call it Myanmar, Yangon. Then I was brought up in Hong Kong, then lived in Singapore, and then moved to the US. So, in between, from my schooling in Hong Kong, I did various training at the various manufacturing business, like the luggage business and the watch manufacturing business. Then when how I got into the hotel business was um, my family got a hotel in Singapore, and it used to be managed and run by the Oberoys, and it was called the Oberoi Imperial Hotel. So my father moved there in 1977, and I moved in 78. That's like many, many moon ago. So I came to help my dad, being the owner's rep for the hotel, and the Oberoys were, excuse me, were managing the property. Then over the years, of course, the experience, seeing how hotels are run, and more I looked at it, the more and more I got interested in. So then we used to have a lot of meetings with the general manager of the hotel, who's actually representing the Oberoys, and myself, my dad, we were the owner's representative. So we used to have a weekly meeting with them. Then after a couple of years there, I thought myself that going into this business, I need to understand more. So I went and joined a hotel school with the Singapore Hotel School, and they had the collaboration with the hotel school in Lausanne, which is still is a very prestigious hotel school in the world. So I did that for 1 year, and then after that, I went to Cornell to do a 2 weeks general manager's program. So I always believed in always improving oneself, and of course, the most best part of it is while I was doing this, I had the both the experience doing a theoretical and the practical side of it. So
Mhm.
that gave me a better understanding of how hotel operated. So after
Excellent.
that, so that's how I went into it. And then when the hotel, we had a mutual termination of the agreement with the Oberoys, I believe around 1987. So I took
Mhm.
over the property and ran it as a general manager also of the property. So I was
Mhm.
fully hands on this property, which was a 600-room property with three fine dining restaurants, the
Mhm.
French, the Chinese, which is a Szechuan cuisine, and of course a 24-hour coffee shop. And
Mhm.
of course, not to forget our most famous Indian restaurant called the Rang Mahal, and that was famous all throughout Singapore. Then we have, and actually being Indian sort of a hotel, starting with the Oberoi, we had a lot of Indian celebrities like this Shah Rukh Khan,
Mhm.
Aamir Khan, all of them. They used to come and stay in our property. That's how I
Mhm.
interacted with them. And then,
Excellent.
of course, then after that, I said, the bug is in me. I'm in the hotel business for long haul.
Okay. So when was I would say, the birth of Plantation Bay
Okay.
Hotels? When was that company started?
Okay. So in the year 2000, the property was sold. The Imperial Hotel was sold. So I decided that, because that one was a family business. So I decided I want to venture on my own. So
Mhm.
I decided that I'm going to move to the States because most of my brothers and my and sisters were in Los Angeles area.
Mhm.
So I said, okay, I'm going to move to the US, take my family there. So when I moved to the US, for the first few years, I was like looking at properties to invest and manage. So then I came up with the idea of, I was like resort. I was like, because Singapore, Asia is like a hot city, a hot country. I mean,
Mhm.
weather-wise. So I always felt like a resort feel. So I created a company called Plantation Bay Hotels LLC in the US. So I
Mm-hmm.
got my first property, which is what I call limited service property. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Started off as a Holiday Inn Express. Then now eventually I converted it into a Fairfield Inn and Suites by Marriott. And the understanding was I still own and operate the hotel
Mm-hmm.
100%. I just have a franchise agreement with the Marriott group.
Mm-hmm.
So they basically, help us in reservation system, certain guidelines, certain things to look at. But the management is 100% by me. And eventually I decided that one property was not enough and I wanted to grow.
Mm-hmm.
And first thing I learned was, in Asia, we work a lot. There's no timing. Like we work, being in a hotel business, you are like 24/7. So there's no
Right.
such thing as okay, we switch off the clock and go and enjoy. But of course, whatever I believe you work hard, you need to play hard. You need to enjoy life. So I
Mm-hmm.
had my general manager, and then we had a little bit misunderstanding sometimes because I wanted him to work sometimes off days, certain times, and he understood where I was coming from. Then that's how we started to gel. And initially there was some problem, but then I always believe, be honest, be upfront, take care of your customer guests, they'll take care of your
Mm-hmm.
guests. I mean, take care of your employees, they'll take care of your guests. So
Absolutely.
then after that, um, we started doing very well in the hotel business. And then I was also told my general manager that, you know, he always says, sir, why we have to be working so hard? Why we have to give, like you always mention, 5-star service? I said,
Mm-hmm.
listen, 5-star service, it doesn't cost extra. Because he said we are 3-star hotel or 2-star hotel, but I said that's not the issue. The issue is we need to take care of our guests. And always
Mm-hmm.
because I was coming from a 5-star property. So I had it in me that we need to take care of our guests, whatever it is, a 5-star. Then actually he's no longer with me, but until today he thanked me and he said he learned a lot from me. So then
Excellent.
from that hotel, I went into a property in Sydney. A hotel, we bought a hotel in Sydney.
Wow.
Something strange. A lot of people saying, "What from the States going to Australia, Sydney?"
Right.
I
Right.
always like Sydney. It's a beautiful country. And then we found a property in the middle of CBD. It's
Mm-hmm.
a boutique hotel. We did a complete renovation. We bought it like a few years ago, and
And
then
may I ask a question? A lot of what you've been doing is picking these locations, but you're potentially Australia is not a market that you were fully aware of, not a market that you were fully acquainted with. How do you know how to pick the right location? Who did you consult with, and how did you pick the right location, even if you're not in that market before?
okay, yes, you're right. I'm not in the market of Sydney. I mean, in Australia or Sydney, but like I mentioned earlier, I was very fond of Australia and Sydney. I've been there a couple of times, and when I looked at it, I somehow found out that the hotel business in Sydney was quite strong. And I did my own study of like there are some star report, like they show how's the trend, how's the occupancy, how's the average rate. So I
Hmm.
felt there's an opportunity because I'm a businessman.
Right.
Where I can smell, I can make some money, I go there.
Hmm.
So I felt, I know states were there, but I felt I had a passion of going abroad. And since I was always living abroad, so I felt of going into Australia. I did my studies. Then I
Hmm.
did a specific request to my hotel brokers that show me a property that's only in CBD because I didn't want to waste going into a new venture. I want to make sure I had a good location. Like that's the
Hmm.
saying in hotel: location, location, location.
Right.
So whatever you do, location is very important. So that's how I decided. And I looked at it. I didn't go in and just buy a property that right away. I went, it took me like at least few years because I
Of course.
rejected a lot of properties. So finally I found one properties right smack in the center of CBD. That's
Excellent.
why I went into Sydney.
Right. And as far as the management when it comes to hotels, what are some key learnings you had when it comes to managing in this particular industry? As we discussed, this is more of a seasonal business. This is something that comes with lots of management intensive tasks. So what were your key learnings when it comes to this particular industry that helped you manage it?
Okay. As I think everyone is aware, and you might be aware, hotel business is basically people business. It's, of course, you have the asset, the property, furniture, fixture, but the main thing is people business, and we need to
Hmm.
take care of people. And that's what I learned a lot about people. And myself, I'm a very extrovert person, but a bit
Hmm.
shy sometimes. But once I'm open, I'm very open in a sense. I become very friendly. So I
Right.
like the people industry, and I make a lot of friends. And what I learned was that, like in the hotel business, we have to have that, what we call, first thing is that we like to be with people. We like to talk to people, because
Hmm.
when I hire people, I mean people or my new employees, I look into this. Of course, degrees, experience, all are important, but the most important is they would like to be with people, and that's a
Sure.
key element. You can have all the degrees that you want, but your attitude and you're not so friendly, that's what I don't want them to be in my team. So I learned a lot
Hmm.
about that. Let's take care of our people, and once we take care of our employees, and they will take care of our guests. And of course,
Hmm.
most important is for general managers, and we are also the management company. We also have to take care of our owners, whoever our
Right.
shareholders, because we are not only working for the hotel, and for the employees, working for the owners, whoever they may be.
Of
So,
course.
but myself, I am a hotel owner too. So I always believe take care of everyone.
Absolutely. And for you to be able to take care of people, especially your guests, you have to hire the correct people. So how
Correct.
did you approach hiring?
So basically, what I do, like mentioned earlier, was I look into, of course, experience. I look into the education, the background. But most important, when they come for the interview, I see more of their attitude, the
Hmm.
charisma. Do they
Hmm.
have the right charisma, which is very important?
Right.
Do they have that twinkle in the eye? I know I'm going to that love sort of story, but this is very important for me to see people have that passion.
Hmm.
And so this is very important, because everyone might have a degree, everyone might have a experience, but most important, they have that charisma, the twinkle in the eye.
Hmm.
That's very important for me. And then, of
Right.
course, then comes the training, which is the core of it. You might have all these right people coming in, and some might not even be experienced. I mean, I'm okay with that, but I must have a very good training program. I must make sure that all my employees are trained well.
Hmm.
And they know what needs to be done, because I've seen
Right.
a lot of cases. Sometimes the staff are good. They know how to approach guests, but sometimes things go wrong. And it's not sometimes their fault. It sometimes could be training. So we have to go back and see and learn where we went wrong and then improve.
Hmm. And even on that point about the charisma aspect, you're choosing the kind of environment you're going to have at the hotel by the kind of staff you hire. So, what were the key signs that someone had that charisma that you're looking for that would directly impact the environment of the hotel?
Okay, the first key important is the smile. You know,
Okay.
the smile is important. I mean, you come in with like a straight face and all, that's already a no-no. So you should,
Okay.
the first thing I look at when you come in, you're all smile, but not overpowering, but smile, that warmth that you create when you enter the room for the interview, and you have
Hmm.
that positive look. And when you start talking, start presenting yourself,
Hmm.
you're very confident and
Hmm.
very like open, and always having a smile in your face. Whatever
Hmm.
you do, you talk, you have that smile. And
Hmm.
of course, very important, the twinkle when I say is that I can see in their eyes how they feel, how they talk, whether coming straight from the heart, which is very important. Like
Yes.
I remember there was an ad long time ago. I don't remember the ad. Like they're showing that someone at the hotel, like when a guest walk in, they just like smile and then okay. Then when they go away, they're like not smiling anymore. So they should be
Mhm.
always happy, always smiling.
Okay, excellent. And then when it comes from the business perspective, because I know you did mention that you are business oriented, when it comes to expansion and of course expanding locations, what did you figure out other than picking the right location? What's required to expand hotels?
Of course, very important is capital. You need
Of course.
funds, of course. That is very important. And you need a team
Hmm.
members to assist in evaluating the property, looking at properties, location, and of course, getting a lot of data. But ultimately, Ariane, what I think after all that is also the most important is your gut feeling. You have to
Okay.
have it. Sometimes you might have a lot of all these data, all this that you're looking at, but ultimately it's your gut. Even
Hmm.
sometimes certain property shows is good, good numbers, good this, but if you don't feel right, I will not get it. So gut
Wow.
gut feeling
Interesting.
is important. It's not always numbers. Sometimes even the numbers are not that good. If I have my gut feeling that I can turn around this property, I can make good money, then I'm going to buy it. So it's always
Very
not.
interesting. This is the first time I've heard this on this podcast is using the gut and actually using that as one of the deciding factors when it comes to going forward with the business deal, because a lot of what I've discussed I've heard is focusing on the numbers, the potential revenues in the future, the population growth, all of these factors. But this is the first time I'm hearing about the gut, and I think that's very, very interesting to me. So what I'd like to do now is I would like to shift this conversation to a little bit more about you on the personal side, Suresh. And the first question I have for you is, what is something about you or your life that you wish more people knew about?
Well, the more that well, I would say basically is that um, maybe I should be more into. And nowadays, of course, a lot of people are on all these social media, a lot
Hmm.
of like LinkedIn, you go to Instagram, all that. So I'm still the old school. Um, I am in LinkedIn, but I'm not so loud in that area. But I only wish that I could be a little bit more proactive
Okay.
in social media. That's where today's generation are all gearing into and are growing from there. So that's
Hmm.
where I feel I should be going into more, looking
Hmm.
into that area more.
Hmm. And another question for you is, do you think you've changed by principles or values from when you were in your 20s to now, or do you think you have the same principles and values?
Well, I would say I've changed over the years. Initially, in my younger days, I was very like, I'm still vibrant. I was like vibrant, very vibrant, very go-getter, very impatient. That I
Hmm.
think either I would say it could be a strength, it could be a weakness, but
Hmm.
I was always very impatient and I always wanted to get things done. And I hate to hear long stories. I like to cut the chase, get to the point. But then over the years, I a little bit sober down,
Hmm.
trying to be a little bit less impatient and trying to understand what's going on in my
Hmm.
surroundings. And of
Hmm.
course, also most importantly is trying to give the younger generation the opportunity to grow. Like
Hmm.
I have my kids in getting involved in the business too.
I love that. And what was also very interesting about you, Suresh, is that you come in with a lot of positivity. You have a very positive attitude. What I was really curious about is, how do you stay positive when circumstances are not ideal? Because in the hotel industry, it's very management intensive. There are always probably constant issues potentially with guests, with branding. How do you stay positive in those situations?
Well, I mean, a couple of reasons, but one of the reason is I was like I said, I'm extrovert and also I'm an optimist. I
Hmm.
always see things more on the lighter side, but of
Hmm.
course, I know things if it doesn't go right, there's always a solution to that.
Hmm.
And no point to cry over like they're saying a spill milk, because if you cry, nothing is going to happen.
Right,
So
right.
you have to take action. You have to do something about it and find a solution. That's where you get your mind busy and
Hmm.
not look negative. You're looking at positive attitude and looking at solution. So you
Hmm.
don't become down. And of course, like when I said about cry or spill milk, that reminded me about my dad used to say that sometimes you have to be vocal, sometimes you have to talk. They used to say if a baby doesn't cry, the baby is not going to get its milk.
Hmm.
So
Right, right,
to we have to sometimes cry or sometimes talk. Then
right.
you can get things done.
And you made an excellent point about not focusing on being upset about it, rather being more action oriented. I think a very fundamental difference is that when you have a situation going on that's very problematic, there's two ways you can usually react to it. You can complain about it, you can be upset, or you can figure out what can I do about this, right? Those are two different reactions. And I think the point about taking action as opposed to focusing on being upset is going to be always the best path forward, because crying and being upset about the situation, it never fixes anything. However, if you look at what's in front of you, what's in your control, and take advantage of the opportunities in front of you, I think that's going to be far more effective. And I really appreciate that perspective. So what I'll go ahead and do now is really go ahead and share a very quick perspective regarding fitness and health, and then we'll go ahead and conclude the podcast with
Yes.
Suresh's plans for this year, whether that'll be professionally or personally. The only perspective I want to share today is about being more time efficient when it comes to health and fitness. And the perspective I'll share is not a lot of physical transformations are taught people are taught to believe that they can only be made when you go to a gym or when you go to a location like a studio and exercise. The issue with this is that not all people, not all entrepreneurs or executives have the capacity to always go to the gym or always go to the location because of travel, because of work, etc. So how can you really fix that situation? So if you look at the main driver behind a successful transformation, it's pretty much that you get the right amount of movement and you get the right calorie intake. But out of these two, what takes the time is the movement. So how can you do that in a far more time efficient manner? Instead of focusing on movement, instead of focusing it on it being in a gym, focus on it being more of a location independent approach, a gym independent approach, such as walking. I would also say that step count is actually something I personally use to actually lose over 70 pounds and actually keep it
Wow.
off. So hopefully it gives a perspective that if you figure out a different way to attend to the requirements that fits your schedule, that's going to be far more effective. And so something like step counts can be a lot more effective to do that. But the idea is, can you challenge what is required and can you come up with more effective ways to do that? That's really the whole idea behind it. And it is absolutely possible. And what I would recommend to the viewers who are primarily executives and entrepreneurs is to focus on step count. And that is something you can do while you're listening to our podcast today, while you're traveling, and anywhere there's ground underneath you, you can essentially do it. So that's why I recommend that. But with that, we'll go ahead and conclude the health conversation and go ahead and move on to Suresh's plans for this year, whether that's professionally or personally.
Okay, I know you mentioned about the health. Just to touch base on that quickly, is that I'm not that health conscious, but I believe in playing tennis at least once a week. Being
Yes.
besides being busy, I'm not so much a gym person, but it's also a good thing. I'm a what do you call contact person. I like to play sports where there's contact.
Hmm.
So I like competition. So that's
Yes.
where I keep myself healthy. And the other part which keep my brain a little bit sharp, I have started. I mean, not started. I've restarted playing chess. So that keeps my mind a little bit busy. So exercise is not only at the gym or playing tennis, but I think exercise is also, of course, not only in running the business, but also playing some games to stimulate your mind. So now
Agreed.
for the year 20 for this year, next year, and actually I wanted to add also I have another property also. I just got in San Clemente, so now I've got
Okay.
3 hotels. So now my plan is to get another one or two properties this year,
Hmm.
and hopefully in the states itself this time. And we're looking at hopefully, with of course now the situation is so uncertain because of the war going on and
Sure.
in the Middle East. But I'm still very optimistic. Like, the world will continue whatever it is. So
Of
I have
course.
not closed my doors. I'm still looking around for nice investment properties that I can invest in and grow from there.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for joining me on the podcast. It was an absolute pleasure to learn more about your story, more about how you pick the right locations, how you go about actually managing a property like a hotel, how you approach hiring, and of course, what is required to even expand into a new location. So I really appreciate you for coming on the podcast and sharing that. This was Arin Mohindra and Suresh Jhunjhunwala.